It's like he's putting her down to make himself look good. Like he's making her look desperate so that he looks desired and so that he can like elevate his own status at her expense.
Hi everyone, I'm Julie, she's Kelly, and we're here to find love. We're back again this week for another Bachelor recap. Today we're recapping episode 4 of the Golden Bachelor and Bachelor in Paradise season 9. For those of you who don't know us, hi, we're two dating coaches who analyze the relationship psychology and dating themes in reality TV shows, especially all of the Bachelor shows. So if you're into this kind of stuff, hit the subscribe button to follow along and join the conversation. Let's start off with Golden Bachelor, and man, it is game on for the ladies and for Gerry. The season is heating up. There's a lot of strong connections really forming. Today, we're really gonna dig into the Theresa and Kathy feud that comes to an end this episode. But before then, there's a lot of drama and back and forth around what was addressed in the earlier episode, where Kathy felt like she wasn't quite being the front runner, and she felt like Theresa was bragging or being naive about the way that she was talking about Gerry.
Yeah, this felt like a continuation of last week where Theresa, bless her soul, she went up to Kathy and pulled her during one of the group dates to check in on Kathy and see if they were on a better footing, wanted to see if Kathy was still upset about anything. And she was kind of like, we're good, right? And Kathy was like, like Kathy was like, yeah, actually, like you kind of did the thing again after the last rose ceremony. After the last rose ceremony, once again, you started telling me about things that were happening between you and Gerry after I already told you not to do that. So Kathy re-emphasizes her initial point, which is like, stop telling me so much about what's going on with you and Gerry. And, you know, Theresa, I do think she is just, maybe she's just like not getting it, but she kind of like pushes back. She's like, well, I thought it was okay for me to talk. I think we all talk. Shouldn't I be allowed to talk? And Kathy is like, I am telling you what will make me comfortable in our relationship dynamic, and that is for you to not tell me about Gerry. And Theresa kind of keeps dancing around it. So I don't know, she just doesn't know how to receive Kathy's ask. And granted, Kathy also has this like way of talking that is so brusque, and it just comes off like a little mean and condescending. And I don't know if she's intending to do it. I just think that there's something about the way she talks that it does feel like she is just being a little bit like rough with Theresa. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a challenge because I think everything Kathy is saying is actually right. I actually do agree with Kathy's points.
The delivery is off.
Delivery, exactly. And it's like the way she says it makes it so hard for the listener to perceive it as anything other than an attack. And that's the thing with good communication in relationships. Like one part of it is being willing to be open and honest, say what you're feeling. But the other part of it is how you say it. And Kathy just really drops the ball in that regard. She's great at being open and honest, but the way she delivers her message is always so charged in a way that it's just so hard to receive it. And it's hard to recognize that actually she's making great points because you're so like, why are you being so mean to Theresa? And so it's hard to really listen to this conversation without feeling like Kathy is the bad guy, even though I actually agree with what she's saying.
Totally. What you talked about with communication is so on point, because when you're communicating, if you really want it to be a healthy conversation that actually goes somewhere, you have to see each other as equals almost. It's like, I have my side, you have your side, and they're both validated. How Kathy comes across in the conversation is, I am smarter, I'm more superior, I am seeing something other people are kind of, you know, like the way that you're coming across is not elegant. She is talking down and condescending and being patronizing towards Theresa, and that makes it really hard to listen to, because then Kathy, she comes across like a bully so hard that you can't help but see Theresa as being this innocent victim when she's not. Teresa's doing something. I don't know what she's doing, but it's not completely innocent. I think she's like riding off of the goodwill of the first few weeks of the season. But times have changed, honey. Now you are really, everyone is really competing for Gerry. So because of that like intensity, I do think that Kathy is giving Theresa really sage advice of, you don't want to be a target with people in the house because it is going to make things more difficult. Just keep things to yourself.
Yeah.
Her saying that, like, she tried to say that, but really what she communicated was zip it. And it seems insulting for their generation.
It does. It just feels insulting. Even though it's actually, you're right, good advice.
It's good advice. It's coming through from a very good place. And I think Kathy being unable to express her vulnerability, this hurts my feelings. That also makes things really, really hard to listen to, because then Kathy, what was the example that she used? Me and Gerry had a private date last night and he's sending you home. Of course that didn't happen, but how would that make you feel? That's not the best thing to say to Theresa, because like, I just felt like in that moment, Kathy trying to make an imaginary example to relate it to something Theresa was doing, it wasn't completely truthful, which was another reason why I felt like the conversation wasn't getting anywhere. It just felt like she wasn't able to make like an honest, truthful, real comparison of what was happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right that I think that the way into it would have been just for Kathy to talk about, like, this is how it's making me feel. It's like making me feel small, etc. And instead, it was a little bit more about, here's what you're doing. You are doing this. And you're like, it was very finger pointing, which you said, Julie, last week. It just has this finger pointing type of tone to it. And it's tough because when someone is upset, it's hard to criticize the way that they are saying something. But to your point, this is about, we're talking about how to have the most productive conversations and how to communicate in ways that are actually going to move an issue forward and move a relationship forward, right? In this case, we're talking about the relationship between Kathy and Theresa. If they want to get back into a better place, the way Kathy talks, this like brusque way of speaking, first of all, it's like, it totally works and is funny and entertaining in some contexts. Like her in-the-moment interviews are actually hilarious. And I'm finding them very entertaining to listen to because the way she talks is just, it really works in that context.
Yeah.
But it's like, you gotta know when that's not appropriate and you need to come in with a gentler approach, right? And this conversation with Theresa is an example of that. It's like, sweet baby Theresa is like, clearly already, she's like worried that Kathy is upset with her. And I do think Kathy has the right to be upset with her, but it doesn't help Kathy to get her point across by being a little condescending and being a little snarky in explaining the way she feels and explaining what she needs. It's like when you're talking about those really vulnerable things, then, you come in with a gentler tone and a more earnest tone, and usually that just works a lot better. And of course, the other side of the coin is that Kathy on her side, I think she's being so clear about what she wants, and I really do think Theresa keeps dancing around it. So I would actually be really frustrated if I was Kathy too. Like I would get so frustrated in that conversation, feeling like Theresa is like not listening to what I'm saying, which is like, please stop telling me this stuff. So again, I'm struggling to like fully criticize Kathy because Theresa is like, she's got this innocent demeanor that makes you just want to agree with her. But it's like, Theresa's not listening to Kathy. So it's like both of them are not handling the situation in the best way.
Yeah, it became, I was really happy that this episode was the conclusion of this drama that's been happening in the house, because Gerry was very proactive in addressing the situation. Yeah. And this is pretty much the pattern on any Bachelor show. If there's two people that are having drama, the Bachelor will usually take the side of the person they're more interested in. Unless the criticism is really warranted. But I could tell that when he went up to talk to, first off, before he talked to Kathy, he first spoke to Theresa. And Theresa was telling Gerry that, she said Kathy told her to zip it and was making her feel smaller in the conversation. And that really changed the vibe of how Gerry saw the sympathy rose last week, because he felt like he singled Kathy out, gave her special attention, and she was still kind of putting down Theresa, it still wasn't resolved. So when he spoke to Kathy about it, I felt like Kathy did not do a good repair attempt in terms of being this was my accountability of it. I think that she continued to pile on to Theresa a little bit more. Yeah. And it felt like it made a lot of sense why Gerry was like, okay, this is becoming a problem. I'm not into this. I don't have the space. I don't have the energy. I don't have the time literally to like worry about this. But yeah, I saw his wheels turning in his brain, and I wasn't surprised that he decided to send Kathy home.
I agree. I also think that he's just not into that way of communicating, like Kathy's like just zip it like type of and like brusque way of speaking. I think that Gary's just, it seemed like he was just really not, once he heard Theresa explain that that's what Kathy said, and Kathy didn't back down from it. Kathy was like, yeah, I did say it, and here's what that means to me. I think Gerry was like, yeah, but I just don't really click with people who would talk to someone like that in a conflict, right? And so I think Gerry was like whatever was going on, like that's just like not my style of communication. And so it does make sense that he sent Kathy home. And it's funny, Kathy said in her car ride home, in her limo exit, I can't remember exactly how she phrased it, but she said something along the lines of like, I just have a way of talking, and that's just the way I am, and some people like it and some people don't, and that's fine. And it's, that position is really tricky because it signals a lack of desire to introspect and think about the way that you are impacting other people. And so on the one hand, yeah, Kathy has her personality, which is, like I said, it can be charming in some situations, but you can't just say like, me being true to myself means that I should be allowed to be mean to you because that's true to myself. It's like, that's not how it works. That's not how authenticity works. You need to be able to be flexible and shift your approach depending on the context of what's going on. And Kathy was basically like, I will not do that.
I really love how Gerry was so savvy dealing with this conflict because he has such limited time with each of the women, and I can tell that he's really paying attention to, okay, how Kathy communicates to Theresa in this argument, this is a possibility of how she could communicate to me or the people that I love. Is she able to be flexible? Can she take any accountability? Can she reflect? Is she able to say, okay, maybe that wasn't the right way to say this. I don't want to hurt someone's feelings. I'm going to apologize. It's very clear that he is, he really does value a person that can communicate well or get along well with the people in his life. Kathy did not show that. She could not demonstrate any grace towards a Theresa situation, whereas I feel like Theresa was trying to do a little bit of that. I mean, Theresa wasn't right with the whole Kathy-Theresa conflict, but I felt like the way that she showed herself and communicated how she approached that to Gerry resonated more with him. Yeah. And Gerry is just, you know, he needs to make the right choice for himself because this is a really good opportunity for him to find the person that he genuinely wants to be with, but not just him, his whole family, his kids, his grandkids, his everybody in his life. He needs someone that fits into that. I don't think he's at the age where he's willing to tolerate someone that's going to make his life, his beautiful life that he's curated for himself, messy or intense and difficult.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And it's such a good lesson of like thinking about, hey, the way someone shows up in a conflict with anyone is going to reflect how they're going to show up in a conflict with you one day, with your family, with the people in your life, right? Because of course conflicts will always come up. It's natural. If you spend enough time with people, you're going to disagree about things. Like that's just natural. But how you show up in those conflicts is the thing that matters the most. And, you know, it is very wise or shrewd of Gerry to identify, I just don't like the way Kathy showed up in that conflict. And so I don't want to have that same way of dealing with conflict showing up in my life forever. So it makes sense. And you know what? I think this is something that you can do at any age. Like you don't have to have like a beautiful, fully formed family to decide like, I just don't want to invite this conflict dynamic into my life. I just don't want to invite that into my life. And it doesn't mean Kathy is a bad person, but you know, I do think it is very reasonable to just say like, I just don't want people talking to me or my loved ones in this way. And so I'm just gonna shut the door on that.
Okay, so how do you feel like the Kathy-Theresa conflict was handled? How do you think that Kathy and Theresa handled the conflict? Do you think one of them could have done it differently? Do you believe it was the right time for Gerry to have sent Kathy home? Let us know in the comments down below. And by the way, if you're enjoying watching our recaps, come follow us on Instagram too. We post quick takes there as well as cute little behind the scenes stuff in our stories, and we love getting in the DMs of y'all. So follow us on there.
Okay, now that we are getting on toward hometowns, it sounds like next week Gary's going to select the 4 women he wants to take to hometowns. So it's a good time to talk about, like, who do we actually like for Gerry? Who do we think is a good match for him? And who do we think he might end up picking in the end? What are your thoughts, Julie?
Ooh, I'm starting to see a few frontrunners come up. One is Leslie. I'm really loving her. She surprised me with the talent show with her dance moves, and it was really beautiful to see their ATV connection and this level of protectiveness that he had over Leslie. Their physical chemistry was really translating on screen. I felt like it's growing and it's becoming something that is a lot more interesting than I thought it was going to be, because before I really had it pegged to like Ellen or Theresa, and I still think those are his front runners, but Leslie is coming in hot from behind.
Interesting.
And to that point, I also feel like Theresa is a front runner just because he sent home someone else for her. And I felt like that was probably one of the first big showings that he was like, I am taking a side, and it's Theresa's side. So to see him being very definitive about that shows that he probably likes Theresa more than he is really letting on, and they have a very serious connection. I don't know if I love them together just yet, because Theresa has been involved in drama that I believe I do believe that she like played a really big role in facilitating a lot of that and like getting Kathy as heated as she was. So I'm not sure how I feel about them, but I can tell that Gerry really likes her a lot. And then, yeah, I would say Ellen is one of my favorites as well. I really love Ellen. I love the way that he and her are kind of having these like cute little moments talking about their feelings, and the way that they look at each other's eyes. It's so beautiful and sparkly and lovely to see. Yeah. What about you?
So Ellen would be my top choice. I think
Whoa,
Ellen.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I've really liked her since the first week. I feel like she really caught his eye the very first night, and they seem to have like a very good rapport and like a nice little spark. I think she was the one who he said, you have my attention. I'm really paying attention to you. He said that to Ellen, and it was like, ooh, I just think that he really caught a vibe with her that he really liked. And since then, I just feel like they feel very energetically similar in a way that is a little bit different from Gary's relationships with maybe some of the other women. It's like they're both like these like really ultra sweet, a little goofy, but like a little traditional in terms of how they approach romance. Like they both are very gooey with their feelings and also not overly like sexual. I kind of get the sense that Gerry is not super into the, like, a lot of these women are like going in for the kiss and stuff. Often like I'm like, yeah, go for it. But I kind of actually think that Gerry is like not that into being so physically intimate so quickly. And so I kind of get the sense that some of the relationships where the making out is so front and center are like, I don't know. I kind of wonder if that's not actually Gary's bag. And so with like Leslie, for example, he has like such good chemistry with her, but then I don't actually know that Gerry, like I feel like Gerry will get to a point where he's gonna see that as separate from the women that he actually has like an emotional connection with. And so I don't know, something about his relationship with Ellen feels so like, it's like gooey. Like there's something gooey about it. And I think that's kind of more, I think he's like sentimental. I think he's like a very sentimental guy who likes like that kind of like emotional, like gooey type of relationship. And
it's
so
like a Sunday morning kind of love.
Yeah.
It feels very like subtle and relaxed and sweet. I totally get that.
I kind of feel like he's into that. And I feel like Ellen is just so like, oh, I think I'm falling in love with you, and it's weird, and it's like, it's so gooey, I don't know, and so I kind of feel like that's more aligned with kind of what, like, Gerry is just also so into his feelings in a way that is, like, really cute and really sweet, and so I just kind of feel like Ellen, like, aligns with him in that way, and so I would say Ellen would be my pick for him. Do I think that he's going to pick her? I'm not totally sure. But if I had to select from the women left, Ellen would be the one I would pick for him. And then the other one actually is Faith. I think I still feel like Faith and Gerry could be a good connection because Faith is also, like, she's so very much like, I can really, like, see you in my life. I feel like we were pulled together by the universe. Like, that's her energy. And I do think that Gerry eats that stuff up. Like, I just think that he's into that kind of, it's not necessarily my personal taste, but I just think Gerry is kind of into that thing. And she also has, like, an exciting life and, like, a lot of interesting hobbies that, like, align with his hobbies. I just think they're, like, she's interesting to Gerry. I just keep remembering that scene the first night where she was, like, playing the guitar to him and he was, like, hypnotized by her.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I just think that when they have more moments like that, he will feel mesmerized by her once again. So, but TBD, she's kind of falling behind right now. She hasn't had, like, much one-on-one time with him. So TBD. Yeah. Those would be the two that at least I would pick for him, but I don't know. Let's see.
I love that I totally agree with that. And interestingly enough, that's why with Leslie, I'm wondering if Gerry is like, I've lived my life one way, doing one thing, and now I can embody different sides of my personality that someone like Leslie would tease out of me because she's kind of cool. She's edgy. Yeah. She dated Prince. She's like that's the one fun fact I can never like get out of my mind.
I know. Every time I see her,
she's just so cool.
Prince.
I know. Like, this is the woman that Prince wrote a song about, there's something so interesting and edgy about her that I wonder if for Gerry, it's like, is he going to date where he dates someone that's like, this feels familiar? Or is he going to date someone where it feels like it's awakening a totally different side of him and he gets to like live out the rest of his life, like kind of experiencing this fullness of who he is? Because remember like his tattoo? I was very surprised about.
I was surprised by that too. I caught that also. I was like, Gerry, I didn't think you would have a tattoo. I don't know. I just didn't think so. I don't know. Yeah, I was surprised
he just seems like such a nice little grandpa guy. To see his tattoo, I thought, whoa, this guy is different.
That's a good point. I clocked that also, and I was like, that tells me something about Gerry that makes me think that my perception of Gerry isn't the full picture.
Exactly. And I kind of suspect that Leslie might play a part unwrapping that from Gerry, because it does seem like he goes for the Ellens, the Sandras, the very sweet, lovely women that are very like romantic, very similar to Faith. But I wonder if what will make it more interesting will be like, okay, who can I get out of my head? And that might be a Leslie that is so different, so interesting, would totally spice up his life, would totally make things completely different than how he's experienced it. And it's not like Leslie is not those things, but I think that her personality is probably a lot different than what he typically goes for or what his life looks like.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I'll be so curious to see what happens. Let us know down below, what do you all think? Who do you think is kind of front runner for Gerry? Who do you think Gerry might pick, or who should he pick? What do you think about this like dueling theories, like picking something familiar, like kind of the Ellen camp, versus picking something that's a little bit different, taps into a different side of the personality, like the Leslie camp? What do you think? What do you think Gerry is going to do? Let us know down below. And by the way, if you're enjoying this conversation so far, make sure to give this video a thumbs up. It really helps us out a lot.
So now we go to the sandy beaches of Bachelor in Paradise, our favorite messy reality TV show at the moment. And one of the biggest central dramas was between Sean and Rachel. So the truth box has hit the beach. And this is a box where everybody can it's so summer camp, and it actually makes me want to just cry thinking about like anyone can put in a note that just talks smack about somebody that you haven't resolved anything with. So like everyone is filling the box because no one is having like these proper lines of communication. Sean uses this box, or the messaging of this box, as a catalyst for him to realize his connection with Rachel is not as strong, and really who he's been the most interested in has been Jess, who is with Blake. So he takes that as an opportunity to go to Jess. He never talks to Rachel, at least not in this moment. He talks to Jess, and he says that their original Taylor Swift conversation really knocked him off his feet. Made him think a lot. Oh my God. Me and my boyfriend were literally cringing so hard on seeing Jess rejecting Sean and her basically saying, me and Blake are still open. I'm not open to you at this moment, and I'm not going to be open to you, and I can't be open to you, because you just kind of see the plane crashing very, very slowly. Jess says that like she just sees him as a friend. I think that the classic line was like, oh, I love you so much, and I just love talking to you so much. And Sean immediately knew that there wasn't going to be a connection. Yeah. And that was the moment where Brayden is observing this happen. He is Sean's confidant. He understands that Sean does not have a connection of Rachel. He swoops in and takes Rachel aside. He lets Rachel know that Sean has never really liked her, and he's been talking to her, or he's been talking about her on the beach, making it seem like Rachel is this desperate person that's so into him, following him around, really likes him. By the way, I was so triggered for Rachel. I just felt so, like, she's dealt with this so many times in her season that it was just exasperating that Sean was putting her back in a situation again where she was going to feel like this person that had to, like, beg someone to like her. Yeah, rightfully so. Okay, did you see that? I was so mad because I thought if anyone has seen Rachel's season, you would know this is her sore spot where she feels like she has to compete for someone's attention, and she doesn't. And okay, but anyways, before we get into that, like, Rachel finds that out, and then her and Sean have a really big conflict on the beach. And she basically tells Sean, like, hey, I'm not interested in you anymore, or I can't even talk to you, and I can't believe that you're making it seem like I'm so into you. It was so funny how she kept repeating it, like, I'm so into you, like, I'm so into you, like, this is just me. She was, like,
gagging. She was like...
Yeah, because truthfully, the fact is, like, Sean and her have been enjoying to get to know each other. They've probably been making out. They've probably been talking, and she's been thinking the entire time that he's been participating in the same level that she has, and her problem was that Sean was making it seem like the only reason the connection has gotten that far was because Rachel was the one that was showering these compliments or this attention towards Sean that he, like, couldn't let go of.
Oh my goodness. Okay, my read of this is that I don't think Rachel ever really liked Sean. I think both of them... I
agree.
They literally said this, I think it was last week or the week where Hannah Brown came down. Hannah Brown came down and, like, did that whole, like, truth bonfire thing. And then afterwards, Sean and Rachel had this conversation because in the truth bonfire, Sean brought up that he's also interested in Jess. And Rachel, I think, mentioned, like, a few other guys that she was interested in coming down the beach. And they sat down on the bed after that bonfire, and they were like, Sean was like, oh, that was super weird. Like, you know, just so you know, I haven't, like, pursued things with Jess. And Rachel was like, you can pursue things with Jess. Like, we're just chilling. Like, she was very clear, like, we're just, like, taking it easy and hanging out. So, like, she literally said that to him. And so it was very clear that both of them are just not that interested in each other. And everyone, I feel like all of the people on the beach in their in-the-moment interviews, when they're talking about all the couples, everyone has been very much like, yeah, Sean and Rachel are just, like, hanging out, but I don't think they're going to get married or anything. Like, people have been it's, like, very clear that the two of them are just chilling, spending time with each other, hanging out, because they're not really connecting with other people on the beach, and they're just kind of like, well, we'll just chill because, you know, why not? And so, to me, it's been very clear that this has been a casual thing all along from the beginning, and I feel like they have told each other that they want it to be a casual thing. So, for Sean to go and tell people, like, Rachel is so into me, she just likes me so much, so I feel guilty pursuing other people. It's like he's putting her down to make himself look good. Like, he's making her look desperate so that he looks desired and so that he can, like, elevate his own status at her expense. And that's just so shady, honestly. It's, like, very shady behavior to, like, take someone who's, frankly, like, your ally. It's like they're coasting together and kind of just, like, giving each other, like, you know, company while they wait for other connections, and they've made it clear that that's what they're doing. So for him to kind of take his own ally and make her look desperate and small, like, while talking to other people, just so he can look or feel good, or so people think he's desired. I just think that's so low. I think that's like really shady behavior, especially with someone who is an ally to you. And, you know, it's funny because like in that conflict, I think he was like confused why Rachel was mad. And he was like, oh, like Rachel thinks I'm using her. And it's like, she's not mad at you for using her because you're both using each other mutually and consensually. She's mad at you for making it seem like she actually likes you, which is not the case. And so to me, it felt like he was like using Rachel as an excuse for why he hadn't pursued Jess yet. He's like, oh, well, there's a reason why I haven't pursued Jess. It's because Rachel likes me so much. And it's like, no, you've just either like didn't have the guts to pursue Jess, or you've kind of subtly known that Jess is not into you, but don't make it seem like it's Rachel that's why you're not pursuing her. And so to me, it just felt like he just kept disrespecting Rachel, someone who has been like very like on a chill zone with him, and it was for no reason other than to make himself look bigger and look like he has more power than he does. And he like then later like lied to her about like what happened with Jess. Like he was like, oh, like me and Jess, well, we like the communication wasn't good, so I decided not to pursue her and pursue you instead. It's like, why are you just lying about random little things? I mean, the reason he's lying is, again, to make himself look good. It's just to save his own face. He doesn't want to admit that he got rejected by Jess. It's the same thing. He's just, like, telling all these little lies to make himself look good, but it's, like, making the women he's interacting with look bad.
Yeah. Oh, and it made him look so bad as a person. I felt like when he was talking to Rachel, which, first off, Rachel did a master class in just calling out his BS. She was like, so you're blaming Jess. She's so
smart. I love that bitch. I'm sorry. I know. Her.
Rachel is just brilliant because first you picked the wrong girl to mess with Sean. Like, Rachel has dealt with this so many times with so many other inadequate men that have tried to make her feel like she wasn't enough. And she has like really fought this narrative with Clayton, with Tino, with so many men on her season that Sean was just another man that she had to bulldoze like out of her way to be like, look, I'm not going to have any of this BS in my life. You're saying all of this stuff to everybody on the beach. I'm finding this out through people. It's so embarrassing what happened between you and Jess, like what was going on. And then the way that he communicated it was like, oh, we just couldn't communicate effectively. I just want to pursue you. And I just want to talk to you, and you're the only person I want to talk to. That just backfired so significantly because, of course, Rachel is going to talk to Jess about it later on, off camera, on camera, whatever. Right. But she will figure out the truth that it did not work out for Sean. And it's one thing for her to coast with someone. It's another thing to now know you're talking poorly about me. And it's another thing to be like, oh, and now you're choosing me because you literally can't get anyone else. This is not like someone I want to make out with. Like, you can't get your number one pick, so you're going to settle with me. I'm not settling with you. I can make out with anyone else, and I'm going to make out with the person that, you know, told me about this. You're totally right. I felt like Sean handled that so poorly, and he looked so freaking bad, and he tried so hard to make himself feel like this very hot, desirable, attractive person that people are flocking to on the beach. And if anything, this episode revealed to me why no one is talking to him, because he comes across like very egotistical, or at least in this moment of needing to put down a person that he's being intimate with so that he can feel bigger to everybody else on the beach. That's totally not okay. And I just really wanted like personally defend Rachel, because we've seen her go through so much. So many people have done this to her, and I just couldn't believe that Sean, who seems like her friend, on top of a person that she likes making out with, was the next person to treat her this way.
Totally. I was very grossed out, frankly, by Sean's behavior. And like, he just as easily could have just been like, oh, I've just been like chilling and hanging out with Rachel, like we're having a good time. And like, also we've talked about wanting to explore things with other people, and I just haven't done that yet, but maybe now is the right time for me to do it. Period. He didn't have to put Rachel down in order to explain why he didn't get Jess yet. Like, it just felt, it makes me so upset watching people put down anyone, but there's definitely something particularly really irritating about watching Sean put like these different women down to like make himself look more desirable. And they're like women that he has expressed interest and attraction in. And like, to me, that's even like a level more gross. It's like, I'm interested and attracted to you up until you stop being useful to me. Then I'm going to put you down to make myself look good. And it's like, ew, that feels so... Okay, in comparison to, for example, like, this is like a small, very, very small thing that Kat did that I actually liked. We're going to get into the Kat thing because she was really, there's a lot going on with her this week. But there is one small thing that I did clock, which is that Rachel, later when Rachel and Brayden go to, like, talk and make out, Rachel says to Brayden, like, I talked to Kat, and Kat said that I should go for it with you and that you're a good kisser and I should, like, just, like, go make out with you. Like, Kat said that to Rachel. So actually, one thing that I clocked was that Kat is upset with Brayden and, like, they have this, like, ongoing, like, little feud about how their relationship ended. But that doesn't mean that Kat was like, oh, well, Rachel, Brayden sucks and you gotta, like, whatever. The fact that she was like, actually, he's a good kisser, you should go make out with him. Like, I was like, all right. And, like, that I actually appreciate. Versus Sean is like, as soon as he he gets rejected by women, it's like, let me put them down. I'm like, ugh. Ugh, I hate that as a vibe.
Yeah, it was when I saw Kat exhibit that, and then I saw the way that Sean, I can see him continuing to like cause drama for them on the beach, but I'm very happy that it seems like he is going to go home this episode or the next one.
All right, let us know what you all thought about this whole Sean and Rachel interaction, and what do you think about the way Sean handled his conversations with Jess and Rachel? Let us know down below. Leave some comments.
By the way, if you've watched this point in the video and you aren't subscribed to our channel yet, hit that subscribe button. We do this every single week and we recap every single episode of The Golden Bachelor and Bachelor in Paradise and so on. So please subscribe and follow along.
Okay, so that takes us to the Kat of it all. We had kind of part 2 of the Kat situation from last week. Last week, there was all of this stuff going down between Kat and Brayden, where Kat broke up with Brayden in a way that he perceived as being cold. They tried to talk about it. She got really defensive, and the conversation really went nowhere. So this episode, we kind of got more of that playing out. People basically put into the truth box that a lot of people think that Kat did Brayden wrong and that Kat, you know, is going to do something similar to Tanner. So that kind of stuff. Someone even said, like, Kat is not a friend to Jess the way, like, Jess thinks she is, which I was like, whoa, what's this?
I feel like Jess wrote that.
Well, Jess looked surprised.
Remember that Tanner was Jess's number 1 guy. And I don't think
true.
that, I don't know if Kat even had the thought of like, I'm going to talk to Jess about this. She probably just got right with him and then just kind of continued on the beach. So I wonder if Jess wrote that down or like one of like Kylie wrote that down.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, so Kat was kind of, I think, set off. I think that all of these comments, you know, we know from just all of the other scenes with Kat. Kat tends to have a very, she tends to have a very defensive reaction. She cannot handle criticism whatsoever. And of course, all of these little notes in the box were all criticisms. And so, like, she really just gets fully triggered and goes fully into her, like, defensive stance. She's yelling and, like, shouting at the camera in her in-the-moment interviews. It is definitely quite alarming to watch the way she's talking to the camera. And honestly, to me, I was, like, uncomfortable watching her, the way that she was kind of like she couldn't regulate her emotions. It was actually very intense to watch. And honestly, like she was like targeting Aaron S as the person that was the cause of all of this, because I think her and Aaron S had a conversation. Aaron S is very close to Brayden, and so she targeted Aaron S as being the instigator of all of this, or like at least the person she focused all of her like anger at. And man, like some of the things she was saying about him, I thought were like really crossing a line. She was like, well, this is why he's single at 33. And I was like, what is this, Kat? Like, first of all, you're 27. It's like, you're not that far off. But two, it's like, people can be single at any age. Like literally an hour ago, we're watching all these sweet 16, 17-year-olds dating, and they're, like, single and, like, rallying them. And then we come here and we watch you doing the same thing that, like, creates so much shame for people dating at ages above 30, which is you're shaming people for being single, which is just ridiculous, honestly. People can choose to partner or not partner at any age, and it's not a mark of shame or whatever, the age at which you choose to partner or if you never choose to partner. So I was just like, what are you doing, Kat? You're just firing off the most crude and like low insults at people, and it was showing a lot of like, well, I'm under attack, so I'm gonna attack other people and fire off these attacks on other people to make them also look bad. Like, Aaron's coming at me, I'm gonna come at him. Like, let me unload all these terrible things I thought about Aaron anyway. And I was like, none of it's even relevant to your conflict.
Totally. It's all of the thoughts that you never say out loud. You can maybe have a fleeting thought once in a while that's just completely uncalled for. But for her to express it screaming in one of those behind the scenes interviews, it made me cringe so bad. It was so uncomfortable to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other thing that she was like, Aaron S needs so much therapy. I was like, what?
As if therapy is bad.
I don't know. Honestly, I wasn't actually sure of what she was trying to imply. I was like, are you saying that therapy is bad, or are you saying that you're better because you've been to therapy? It was like, to me, this was just like such a weaponization. Like, this is classic weaponization of therapy, using it as a way to like put other people down. Like, I get the sense that Kat has been to therapy actually, and that she like thinks of herself as like very evolved or like holier than thou because she's been to therapy and she's done the work. And to me, like, I do think that we are getting to a place in like our dialogue around therapy where it's like people kind of like wield it to like put other people down, which is what I got the sense from her, that she was implying like, I've been to therapy and Aaron hasn't, and so like Aaron needs so much therapy, he's so broken, and like broken people go to therapy and broken people should go to therapy, and he's so messed up and I'm so great because I've already fixed all my problems. It was like so many like a combination of so many weird thoughts that gets muddled together in this concept of like, he needs so much therapy.
Yeah, she came across very bad this episode. She definitely was full force Category 5 Hurricane Cat, just raining destruction with a lot of her words, her behaviors, and the way that she handled that truth box. I will say, Kelly, that you made such an excellent point about how ageist she was being about Aaron being 33 and still being single and on the beach looking for love. After watching Golden Bachelor and then seeing that, there is something that feels like, oof, this is why people feel shame about relationships and dating and maybe being single when you're at a certain age, because of this perceived judgment that most of the people aren't thinking. But when Kat says it out loud, it's like, maybe they are. Maybe people do think I'm pathetic or desperate, or I am so unlovable that I can't find anyone. Like, these are the secret thoughts that we could foster inside that Kat was saying out loud and verbalizing, and that was really, really hard to see.
Yeah.
I will say that I believe that regardless of whether or not she's been in therapy, which I feel like I can't comment on because I have no idea about like her mental health history, I feel confident in saying that Kat exhibits a lot of pretty privilege. I just believe that because she is so attractive, she's probably been able to get away with this behavior a lot in her life with the men that she's dated, or even her friends that have been around her, maybe her parents or society at large. She looks like a Disney princess, but she comes across with a lot of black and white thinking and a lot of defensiveness and criticism, and not really being able to accept any accountability in any situation. Because all Aaron S did, which was obviously a production maneuver, they were like, hey, you're going to probably go home soon. Why don't you just like break the box, make it a moment? Yeah, break the box. He did that, and he just started reading out the notes. I'm positive he probably wrote one of the notes about Kat, but I don't see him taking time out of his day to scrawl all of these notes to badmouth Kat. I think that what happened was that he was the one reading it out loud, and then Kat tried to talk to him afterwards. But they kept going around in terms of he was like, okay, I just want to talk to you. And you're saying you don't want to give me an answer. And she was like, it's not like I don't want to give you an answer. I just don't have to explain myself to you. Which is basically the same thing as not giving an answer to someone. To say like, I don't feel like I want to say anything in this conversation. If Kat is coming from that positioning, there's no way the conversation can move anywhere. All they're going to do is deepen into like their well-defended positions of, I think you hurt Brayden, and Kat being like, I think Brayden completely misconstrued the way that I came across and he didn't understand it, and now all of this stuff is happening on the beach and I feel like I'm being attacked.
Yeah.
I just think no one, like, her friends have been coming up to her to talk about it. Even Tanner is kind of saying a little bit of, I see a little bit of Brayden's perspective on where he was coming from. He didn't take Brayden's side, but he was like, I can see where that was coming from. Kat still didn't use that as an invitation for any kind of introspection, because I do genuinely believe that she like surrounds herself with people that, I don't know, maybe they get so caught up in her looks. There's a halo effect of, she seems like she would be a person that would be like very empathetic when she hasn't really demonstrated that in any of these situations. I think that Kat is wielding a little bit of privilege from her looks, because I just don't know if a lot of other people would get away with their behavior if they weren't as attractive as Kat is.
I think that's really true. And I also think that Kat, when she's not angry at someone, she is very,
she's fun.
Kind to them. Like, she's fun, she's kind. I feel like her friends, she is so, I love you, I'm doting on you, girly best friends thing. Like, she's so like that with a lot of the girls, with Rachel and Kylie and Jess. Like, she's so very friendly with them, and I see the way that she talks to her girls, like when the other girls are having problems, and she seems so caring, like she's showing up as a friend to them. But it's like, it's so like conditional. It's like as soon as she realizes that someone is like attacking her, or like someone is like, as soon as she perceives that someone is attacking her, or thinks that someone is attacking her, and she thinks that someone has crossed her, it's kind of like the switch flips, and then she like lashes out at them so fully. And so she's a complicated person to be around. I did have like this thought of like, man, like all of these girls are really close with Kat, and it kind of makes me a little bit question some of the other women, frankly. I'm like,
guilty by association.
I like have a little bit of a sense of like Rachel, what are you doing being like besties with this gal who is like lashing out at all these people? Like I've had that thought like a few times actually throughout this season. But at least we did see Kylie and Jess attempt to keep Kat accountable. Like they did both come last week and like approached Kat and told her like, this is how like we and other people are perceiving your actions. Like this is something that you should look into. I mean, Kat didn't receive any of that or take any of it well, but they did try to keep her accountable. So that was something that I appreciated. But it does just, to your point, it's like I do think that Kat is being allowed to behave this way. No one is really correcting her enough that she feels the need to change her behavior, you know?
I also think in this situation, I would hope that someone doesn't have to like bring it up to Kat. I would really like to see Kat think, okay, this is continuing to happen and maybe there is something for me to read into. It was just so bad to see her screaming like at the camera about Aaron S. and her just saying like, I'm very nice, I'm very charismatic, I'm all of these things. But she is literally just like really being so emotionally dysregulated and insulting him on camera. Right. It was very hard to see the level that she was stooping down to lift herself up. Like it's like she stood on his back to make herself bigger. I think all Aaron S. said was, you know, Brayden is my friend, and this conversation that I'm having with you right now, where you're not able to see my perspective, does prove how I thought about you in this situation. For someone like Kat, who can't handle hearing anything like negative about herself, it was very difficult for her to hear. And speaking to your point about the conditionality of that, even though Kat is so wonderful and is so amazing to the people that she's dating and her friends in the moment, you can't have like half a relationship with somebody, because conflict and problems and not seeing things the same way is the other half of relationships that is just as valid and true as all of the good parts. So if you're just going after this, but the bad parts are really bad, I think that it does show that there's a level of integration that she hasn't had quite yet, where she can maybe accept a fundamental fact that all humans are, which is we can be shitty people sometimes. We can make the wrong decisions sometimes. We can do things that maybe upon thinking about it later, we could have done things a different way. Everybody is privy to that type of track. I don't know if Kat sees herself in that category, so it's kind of speaking to your point about therapy. Maybe she thinks that she's so evolved, or she sees things so correctly that she is like the arbitrator of how her life is perceived and how other people are perceived. And I think that's one of the biggest signs of emotional maturity. If you really feel like you are the person, not anyone else, but you, singular, that kind of like sees this perspective of truth, it's a little bit problematic.
Yes, yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. It's like if you are so convinced that your perspective, you're the only one who has the right perspective.
Only one.
Everyone else is wrong in every situation. It's like, that's a good sign. You should pause and think, because like it is impossible.
Think about it.
It is truly impossible for any one person to always be right. Truly, truly. Like she keeps screaming at the camera that I'm a charismatic and elegant person, whatever she was saying. She was like, I'm such a...
I know.
It was like the specific words, saying them as you're shouting was just like so ironic. It's like, I'm a graceful and charismatic person. And it's like, oh my gosh. And the thing is, I'm not even saying that she's not a graceful and whatever, caring and charismatic person. I'm sure that she is, but just because we are generally one thing doesn't mean that we won't make mistakes and won't like have moments where like something, you know, maybe a little ugly comes out of us. And we all do this, to your point. And Kat seems to think that she's like so much, she has this image of herself in her head. And any idea that she might be anything other than that is so threatening that she like explodes. But it's like, it is really okay. You do not need to prove to anyone that you never make mistakes and that you never, whatever, like you would never treat anyone poorly. No one needs to prove that to anyone, because the truth is we will all treat people poorly sometimes, like even unintentionally, like it's gonna happen. And so like Kat getting it in her head that I would never do that, I never treat people poorly, I'm always great. It's like, okay, that's your sign that you need to do some reflection, because no one's always perfect.
Exactly. And I mean, we even saw this with the Brayden and Kat dynamic this episode, because in the last recap that we did, you and I were both like, wow, the way that he handled it, he didn't handle it perfectly, but he was gracious in talking to Kat, at least when he was in conversation with her, when he was doing his talking heads. He was calling her a man-eater and being a little bit aggressive with his language. This episode, Brayden did not come across looking great. Like the way that he spoke about Kat, the way that he was describing her behaviors and how he was talking down to her. It was really bad to see them both kind of devolve away from this situation, because they didn't have a good understanding of where things led off. So now Brayden has a very poor perception of Kat, and Kat thinks that Brayden is the reason why she's getting all of this fallback. And when they're looking at each other like that, you can't broaden out to see the full picture of what really happened, which is maybe Kat is just a person that can turn off her feelings like that. And maybe Brayden is a little bit accurate in perceiving the on-off situation, but he probably most likely had his feelings way more invested in Kat than she ever did. And that's really the truth of it. But it's completely spun out to be this whole thing where now Aaron S. is involved and Kat is, you know, beefing with her friends, like very indiscreetly or discreetly. It seems like in the preview, like her behavior kind of escalates when she has her birthday and she's like throwing a cake like on the beach. I just hope that like she simmers down a little bit, or that there's a therapist on staff that she can talk to, so she can just kind of like regulate her emotions or not make her experience so hard on the beach.
I'm glad that you brought up that Brayden is also not innocent in all this as well. I do really think that he started crossing a line, both last week and this week, with the way that he was bad-mouthing Kat. You know, Kat did tons of things in these last 2 episodes that are worthy of condemnation, but Brayden is also crossing a line in a way that to me feels quite icky. The man-eater talk in particular, and the, like, she's just here to mess around and date a bunch of guys, like, that kind of language really leans on very just classically misogynist stereotypes that honestly just draw from slut shaming. It's slut shaming ideology kind of like packaged up with different words. And granted, Brayden does mention, I think in one conversation, that it's okay if Kat wants to date around, but he just wishes she was more upfront about that. And I do agree with that. So I do think that Brayden isn't actually trying to slut shame Kat, but I wish he wouldn't invoke that man-eater language, because there are still plenty of people and places where the belief that women wanting to fuck around and date a bunch of guys, like, those women are inherently immoral. There's plenty of people and places where that is the belief, that it's bad for women to want to date around, which it isn't. Of course, it's totally fine for women to want to date around. And Brayden doesn't believe that it's bad for women dating around. He says that. But then at the same time, he's using this language that stokes and stokes that belief, that gives, you know, that group of people something to latch onto, right? Ooh, she's a man-eater. Oh my gosh, like, women who do this are so bad. Like, it's giving, you're using language that is fueling that fire, even if he himself doesn't believe that. And I just wish that Brayden would be a little bit more thoughtful about the language that he's using to communicate his hurt, because it's totally valid for him to be hurt by what Kat did, but then starting to use this type of, you know, misogynist stereotypes against her, that's where it's starting to me cross a line.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you brought that up. And Brayden, in my opinion, completely misread that situation. I think that Kat just emotionally detaches very fast. And she's like, okay, like, I just was never really that into Brayden, but when I was present and involved in it, I was. But now I'm into Tanner, and that's what it is. I don't think it's her going around the beach with this malicious, manipulative plan to, like, ensnare all of these men into her trap. She's literally just going for feelings, and her feelings are very black and white, and he was caught in the crosshairs of that. And I have a little bit of a bone to pick with Brayden, because whereas we've seen that there is a little bit of an empathy gap with Kat's behaviors, as what's demonstrated on TV, Brayden is a person that does show that he has empathy, or like a willingness to go there with someone. So for him to go down to that level, it was a very intentional stepping down for him.
Good point.
Right? Kat was not. Kat is Kat. Kat is just living her life the way she's always lived her life. Brayden is aware that he has he has perception from everybody on the beach that he was in the right, and he's using that to step all over Kat. That is a little bit icky, and I felt like the way that we'll dig into this a lot next week when we see Brayden and Rachel get together, but I feel like that was a really desperate Hail Mary of him also doing the same thing with Sean, instead of him telling Rachel about the Sean thing, because that would have inevitably blown up. What he did was tell Rachel, Sean does not like you, and now I'm gonna, like, you know, kiss you and make out with you and do all of these things and basically get your bros. I think the way that he did that was very gameplay-y, and I can totally see why Sean was so upset, because I do really feel like he's been all in on Kat, and now he's like, okay, I guess I've liked Rachel, but the way that he went around it, to me, was really immature as well, because he could have just talked to her without also talking shit about his friend.
Well, that's interesting, because I had a different perception of Brayden's pursuing Rachel. I don't think he intended to shit talk Sean at all. It actually feels like when he went to Rachel to be like, so what are you feeling with Sean? I actually kind of feel like he accidentally told Rachel that Sean isn't that into her. I think he was like trying to say, like, oh, Sean says that, like, you're so into him, and I'm wondering, like, is that true? Because he's trying to see if, like, she would be open to pursuing something with him. I don't think he actually intended to be like, and Sean hates you, and, like, he's you. I don't think he, because afterwards he, like, goes back to the guys, because Rachel gets so mad and she goes to go talk to Sean.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then Brayden goes to his guys, and they're like, how did it go? And he's like, I think I accidentally just made her really mad at Sean. Like, he seemed like, he was like, that I didn't even get to, like, hit on her because she, she jumped on the Sean thing. So I actually don't think Brayden intended to do that at all. I think it was kind of like an accident of, like, the way. And, this is classic Brayden, just can't stop talking. Like, he just says everything. And he's so I kind of feel like he's a bit of a blabbermouth. So I do actually think it was not his intention to blow up Sean's spot. And I think it was just, he was honestly parroting the thing that Sean said, which is like, oh, Rachel is so into me, and that's why I haven't pursued Jess. Like, he literally said the exact words that Sean said. So I don't even think that Brayden threw Sean under the bus at all, actually. And
your perception sounds like it was right as well. Because when I saw it, my first read, and that's the hard thing too, like my first impression of it, because he had been so like icky this episode to me, he was really making me cringe a lot. I just automatically felt like, okay, Brayden, the way that he's going about it felt like he was being desperate for Rose, and maybe that was incentivizing him a little bit to like secure something. But you're right that I do think that maybe perhaps he wasn't intentionally trying to throw Sean under the bus, but that kind of happened just by him, repeating what Sean had said to everybody on the beach. So, like, it's not like he did it. I mean, Sean kind of, like, dug himself a hole that Brayden just, like, walked Rachel towards and was like, here, this is what everybody's saying.
Yeah. I think that's a good characterization of what happened. And honestly, like, I don't know what's going to happen with Brayden and Rachel. Like, I do actually think that he was like, yeah, I would pursue something with Rachel. Like, I don't know that he's like, oh my God, I'm in love with Rachel. But I think he was just like, sure, I would be interested in seeing what's happening. If Sean is interested in Jess now, maybe I'll go and try something with Rachel because, I'm interested in seeing what that is. And so to me, I was like, all right, this seems fine for them. Because also Rachel isn't interested in Sean. Sean isn't interested in Rachel. So to me, I'm like, yeah, Brayden should go shoot a shot with Rachel because then they can see, like, maybe they'll be into each other. So yeah, I'm interested in the Brayden and Rachel thing. Let's see how that pans out. I can't tell if he's just doing it for Rose or if he's actually interested in her. But, like, I think they might as well explore it because Sean has made it clear that he isn't interested in Rachel, and Rachel has made it clear that she isn't interested in Sean, so there's no reason for them to continue hanging out if they're not interested in each other, and there's someone else she could be exploring with. So overall, I think the Brayden and Rachel thing, interesting, but I'm totally with you that the way he's handling the cat thing, it's getting to the icky side. It's like, we're now crossing over into, all right, like, it is clear that she has wronged you. Like, don't stoop to Kat's level and now, like, lash out at her.
Exactly.
Right? Mm-hmm. It's like, you need to just, like, back off from it, Brayden, because, yes.
It doesn't look good.
Yeah, exactly. It's like everyone already, like, is kind of on your side and agrees that you were kind of wronged by her. So you now starting to, like, badmouth her all around the beach. It's now you're just making yourself look bad, too. It's just, let her actions speak for themselves. You don't need to go and start being like, yeah, she's a man-eater. Doesn't do anything for your case. It really doesn't. So yeah, let us know down below what you all thought about this Brayden, Rachel, Kat, Sean situation. There's so much now overlapping. Let us know down below what you thought about everyone's behavior in this episode. It's kind of a lot happening. But leave your thoughts down below. Let's keep this conversation going.
All right, so this is all for week 4. We're getting into so much drama and tea. I'm so excited. So make sure to subscribe to follow along for all of our videos, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.